Oh yeah? What's going on, GameLeapers? This is Coach Cheeks, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the 10 best mid laners for patch 12.7, which hits the Rift today. So to know who you can carry on the most from the mid lane for the next 2 weeks, make sure you stick around for the whole video, and we're also going to give you the runes, the items, the skill orders, all the information you need to carry on these beasts in the mid lane. But just before we do get into the video, one thing you guys have to do before you get into your next game is to download the Professor app linked in the description, because it allows you to quickly import the best rune page used from the best players in the world on the champion you're picking. You don't have to make the rune page, just one click of a button and bang, you're ready to go. But that's not all, because the app also allows you to scout your opponents, and the app will give you their stats, how well they play their champion, so you can know more about your opponent than they know about themselves. And the app also gives you an in-game overlay, so you can compare your CS and your kill participation to your rank or even challenger players like Vega. And there's a reason why 3 million people have downloaded this free application, guys. It's because it works. So get around it in Season 12. Those links are in the description. Now, starting off at number 10, we have a great solo queue champion. And in the mid lane for 12.7, it's going to be another nice patch for Katarina. Now, there are no changes for Katarina or to her items that she might build. So that's probably good news, because you're in a good position. So if you take this rune page with Flash and Ignite, you max your Q into your E into your W, and you build Nash's Tooth with Sorcerer's Shoes as your first 2 items, and then you follow this into a rocket belt, it's a pretty scary mid lane champion. Now, the reason we go Nash's Tooth first is because we have lots of on-hit and even attack speed in our kit, so whether it's our passive, whether it's our E or our ultimate, it's a very big first item spike, and then getting rocket belt for the dash, so this pairs nicely with your Shumpo, and also for the magic penetration, you are going to shred everyone on the Rift. Just remember to play a little bit passive in the early stages of the lane, because that is your weakest point. So Katarina starts off the countdown at number 10. Now, beating Kat to number 9 on the countdown is another AP assassin, and this one statistically isn't that great in lower elos because she does have a pretty high skill ceiling, and this is LeBlanc. So the stats I'm showing you, these are from high elo in Korea, and when you can master this champion, which you can do by signing up to the website once again. But yes, let's have a closer look here. So as far as your rune page goes to the new treasure hunter rune, because you're a roaming champion, you should be able to get those bounties, those takedowns, and get the gold the rune is giving you. So that's why we go this. Then we want to take a dematerializer in the inspiration tree, and really you want to do this into ranged champions, because LeBlanc's biggest weakness is her wave clear getting shoved in, and it can be annoying playing the lane if you don't have that priority. So minion dematerializer into ranged matchups. If you're into a melee matchup, you can always just change this to biscuit delivery. Even though Time War Tonic has been nerfed, it's still worth to go in 12.7, so don't worry too much about that. And then you can either take Ignite or you can take TP. If you think you're against a champion who you can't kill in the mid lane, so it might be someone like a Malzahar for instance, taking teleport is definitely the way to go. But if you're in a volatile matchup or a matchup you think you can win, take Ignite to win it even harder and carry the game. And as for your items, it's full magic penetration. Sorc Shoes, Luden's Temper, Shadow Flame, Void Staff after this, and if you're a good LeBlanc player, you shouldn't really need to go Zhonya's. So LB comes in at number 9, great solo queue champion. Now coming in at number 8 on the countdown, we have 4 attack damage assassins in the mid lane, and for 12.7 they're going to be very happy because Umbral Glaive is getting buffed. So the champions I'm talking about, we have Talon, Kiana, Pyke, Zed. These champions who love lethality, they love the ability Ace, and they also benefit a lot from the passive, because Umbral Glaive's passive, so when you get vision of the enemy team's wards, this is down 10 seconds. So you're going to have way more opportunities to roam around the map, not get seen, and just get kills. And the total cost for Umbral Glaive is down 100 gold. So you can get this so quickly, so quickly. And because these champions can really get going from level 6 onwards, you can snowball out of control. So if you are playing an AD assassin in the mid lane, guys, in 12.7, try the new Umbral Glaive, especially if you are winning your lane and you have a few kills by that point. But let's say you don't want to play one of these really mobile solo QE champions. Well, maybe a more solo QE champion based on actual win rate is Anivia, who has been super good ever since Everfrost, Crown of the Shattered Queen. These 2 mythic items, they cost 2,800 gold. It's very cheap, they're very accessible. But not only that, because we also have to take into consideration the Archangel Staff buff, which reduced it to 2,600 gold. So for your first 2 items, which are big spikes, you're spending barely any gold compared to other champions on the Rift. This is of course going to help your scaling and just accelerate it, and for a champion who scales so well like Anivia, this is huge and has been huge as well. Just make sure as far as your rune page goes, you take Relentless Hunter. The movement speed, one of the big weaknesses for Anivia is her mobility. So the movement speed we're going to get from takedowns is going to allow us to get in position reduction, to use our crystallize, our abilities, and also to dodge enemy skill shots and not get caught out, so very important. Now coming in at number 6, we have another AD mid laner who is also going to really like the Umbral Glaive buff, and this is Pantheon, who has also received some changes in 12.7. So your Q, if you just tap your Q, so if you don't charge it up, it's actually going to travel a little bit further. Now the width is a little smaller, so against mid lane champions with small hitboxes might be a little harder to hit, but this is certainly worth it. And what's also happened is that when you're running backwards, your E is no longer going to slow you. This is really going to be useful for evading ganks, for tower diving, and your ultimate, when you crash down, it's actually going to happen a little bit quicker, so when you're diving bot lanes and top lanes and making plays with your ultimate, it's harder for the enemy champions to react to. And because of the Umbral Glaive buff, like I said, 2300 gold, 100 gold cheaper, and because Pantheon is such a strong early to mid game champion, the buff is perfect. It is just so ideal. So Pantheon, because of all of this, is in the countdown. Now starting off the top 5, we're actually just going to stay with the attack damage mid laners here and talk about another one who got buffed in 12.7, this being Yone. So your ultimate at later ranks is on a lower cooldown, and for a late game champion, this is a more than welcome buff. But here's the thing guys, in higher reloads, it's probably not going to mean that much because games most often are going to be decided by the 15-20 minute mark, so you're going to be nowhere near level 16. But in lower elos, most games do last until 30, maybe even 35 minutes, so level 16, you can reach this in most games, and this is when the ultimate buff, the cooldown reduction, is really going to mean something. More ultimates, more plays, more kills, and maybe even less deaths, because you can use your ultimate to escape those dangerous situations. So Yone, because of this buff, even though the lifesteal changes kind of affected the champion a little bit, he's still very good, and this is why he's starting off the top 5. Now moving on to number 4 in the countdown, we have to talk about NiKo, who has received some W buffs. So in terms of the damage with your auto attacks, and also the movement speed you get from your W, these have all increased. This might mean the Nash's Tooth NiKo is on the rise, but to be honest, you can still build the Rocket Belt, Sork Shoes, Shadow Flame, full magic penetration build and have a ton of success. Just like Anivia though, going Relentless Hunter, movement speed's a very important stat for NiKo, and it also synergizes really nicely with the W buff that's come in. So the movement speed from Relentless is going to give you a better chance of gap closing to the enemy champions and getting those huge pop blossoms off in team fights. And NiKo honestly will probably be on this countdown for a while because of those buffs a few patches ago to her hitbox, to her Q's damage, to her E's damage. All of these have pushed her in the right direction, and they're the main reason she is here, and the buffs this patch, they will help as well. But beating NiKo to number 3, well, kind of similar to NiKo, is another champion who has been updated this season, and this is Ahri. And even though Riot tried to nerf this champion, she is still a strong as mid laner, and honestly, probably the best blind pickable mid laner because there's nothing that really hard counters you. And you can see that from these stats in almost 100,000 matches with this rune page, a 52% win rate. You can also see with Flash and Ignite in 170,000 matches, the win rate is above 52%. This is insane. But please make sure guys, if you do play Ahri, to start with your W in pretty much every single matchup, because the Foxfire orbs are now going to prioritize enemy champions. All of these will land onto them at level 1. Just be sure to build Everfrost into Sork Shoes, into Shadow Flame, because Everfrost gives you the CC and the setup you need to land all your skill shots, and then we want Sorcery Shoes and Shadow Flame for the magic penetration, so we can still one-shot the champions we catch out. But the best major 12.7 is beating Ahri to number 2 on this countdown, and like Ahri and NiKo, this is a champion who has been buffed this season as well, and this is Vega. And to be honest, ever since Riot buffs your Q, so you're getting more stacks now, it doesn't really matter what they do in terms of nerfing you. If that is here to stay, then Vega is most definitely going to continue to be on this countdown. Just be sure if you are playing Vega still, a bit like Ahri, we want Everfrost into Sork Shoes, and then we want a Rabadon's Death Cap. We shouldn't need Zhonya's or a defensive item for our first 3 items. We want the utility from Everfrost, and we also want the damage and magic penetration from Sork Shoes, and then Rabadon's Death Cap. After this, you have an array of options, so you could get Zhonya's Hourglass, Void Staff, Banshee's Veil, and a Themer's Chains. If the enemy team has a really big hyper carry, like a Vayne, a Jinx, a Kayle, this will cuck them. But please guys, be sure to max your E after your Q, because we want this cooldown to be as low as possible. But the number 1 mid laner for 12.7, trumping everyone else, this is a champion who has been buffed in 12.7, and to be honest, buffed big time, and this is Yasuo. So your base HP is now 520, so at level 1 during the early laning phase, you're going to be a lot less killable. And even though your early game game and some matchups might be scary to play against, really it is the weakest part of your game. Once you start getting to the mid and the late game and you get the damage, you get the crit, you get the Q cooldown down to just over 1 second, that's when you really become online. So having an early game buff is going to get you to the late game more often. But just like your win brother Yone, Yasuo is also getting an ultimate buff, so the cooldown at rank 1 is down 10 seconds to 70 seconds, and at rank 2 down 5 seconds to 50 seconds. This is really useful again because this is an early game buff, which is maybe where you need it. Because of the sustained nerfs from last patch, your laning phase has taken a little bit of a hit, but because of the buffs in 12.7, Yasuo is the #1 champion, guys, in the mid lane this patch. So get ready for the ban rate to increase to 50%. But those were the 10 best mid laners for 12.7, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, remember to leave a like down below, and I will see you in tomorrow's daily Season 12 upload. This has been Coach Cheeks. Peace.